President Biden is pledging another $150 million in military assistance to the country. He's expected to talk with Ukrainian President Zelensky during a meeting of G7 leaders Sunday. At the same time, First Lady Jill Biden is in Eastern Europe showing her support for Ukraine. She's meeting with NATO leaders and Ukrainian refugees in Slovakia and Romania this weekend. Meanwhile, civilian evacuation efforts resumed at a steel plant in Mariupol. It's the last stronghold in the city. Ukrainian officials fear Russia will launch a larger offensive to capture Mariupol ahead of Monday's Victory Day holiday. CBS News foreign correspondent Deborah Pata joins us with more from Kyiv, Ukraine. Deborah, it's always great to see you. What is the latest on the steel plant evacuations and the resistance still happening there?
Meg, it would appear that all women, children and the elderly have now finally been evacuated from that steel plant. Many of them have been there since the war began, so well over 2 months now. And you can imagine being underground that entire time, trapped in this maze of underground bunkers with very little light, having to cook food over candles. Must have been a terrifying experience, going to bed each night and not knowing whether you were going to wake up alive the next day. But it does seem that they are all out, but there still are Ukrainian soldiers who've been staging a last stand. They really are the only thing preventing Russia from taking full control of Mariupol. This, of course, the big prize for Vladimir Putin, and he is desperate to seize control, for his forces to seize control of that steel mill so that they have full control of the entire city and that they can claim victory over it. So it could look as if they might intensify their attacks on that steel mill, which has already taken a huge pounding. Russia has said today that, in fact, all those soldiers holed up there have surrendered, but the Ukrainian officials have flatly denied this. They've come back very strongly saying that is not true and that they are staying there. They are refusing to surrender. But we also do know that the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, is seeking some kind of diplomatic solution, trying to find a way to get those soldiers safely out. So a lot of eyes are going to be on that steel plant and the battle that is fiercely being fought there, Meg.
Absolutely, indeed. And Ukraine, as you know, Deborah, is busy building a war crimes case against Russia. You've been out with investigators and have seen some of these atrocities firsthand. What can you tell us about the investigation?
Essentially, what we're seeing is the aftermath of these atrocities. When the towns were liberated around Kyiv, slowly but surely, we started seeing what prosecutors are saying could be evidence in war crimes, and that they now have nearly 10,000 cases that they are investigating. And slowly, street by street, they are going through all these suburbs and building up a case against Putin and against the Russian forces that they say have perpetuated these atrocities. We're talking about horrific stories of rape, stories of civilian executions, of torture, of extensive damage done to residential areas, which investigators go street from street every single day. They say they're about 80% done now, gathering this evidence. They use drones, they use 3D imaging to try and show the extent of the damage and trying to prove that civilian areas, residential areas, were targeted by Russian forces. And then, of course, there is also the human toll. Today, we went to another village where another body was exhumed. In this particular instance, a man was shot in his car while driving to see his children by Russian forces. The villagers then hastily buried him in a rudimentary coffin to give him some kind of dignity in death. But it was only today that his wife was able to identify him. He was actually killed right at the beginning of the war, so over 2 months ago. She went to the graveside and they managed to retrieve this coffin. It will now be taken for forensic examination. So this is the kind of grim, gruesome work that prosecutors are doing. But it's quite remarkable because it is a huge case. And it is not very often that you get this kind of graphic evidence, the kind of evidence that prosecutors seldom get to build up a case around. But they've also set up a database where people can phone in and report allegations of war crimes. And this is being repeated over and over again in villages, in towns across the country.
The reports are absolutely horrifying just listening to them. Deborah, there are also concerns President Putin will strengthen his offensive on Ukraine ahead of Russia's Victory Day holiday. Put that into perspective for us. Why is it so important for Putin to make a move by Monday, and how is Ukraine preparing?
Well, the Victory Day parade is when Russia celebrates its victory over Nazi Germany in 1945. And every year they have this annual parade. So it's a very symbolic day. One Ukrainian official said it's like a red flag to a bull for Russia, that they are worried that they will step up attacks. But one of the reasons is that Vladimir Putin seems hell-bent on trying to secure some kind of victory. His war hasn't gone very well for him. His forces were pushed out of Kyiv. They were forced to retreat. And so the forces have concentrated their efforts in the east of Ukraine. But that, too, has been staggering along. If you look at Mariupol that we were talking about, those soldiers astoundingly have held on in that steel plant for over 2 months now, preventing Russia from claiming full victory in Mariupol. Mariupol, of course, being the big prize, which would help Vladimir Putin establish that land bridge that he so covets in the eastern part of Ukraine. So he is going to want to claim some kind of victory, to have something to show for all this fighting for over the past 2 months. So it's believed that's why he might intensify attacks on that steel plant. But Kyiv, here in the capital, is also on high alert. Residents have been warned to heed air raid sirens because they are worried that attacks could happen anywhere in the country.
All right, Deborah Pata reporting from Ukraine for us. Thank you so much.